Well, that's what you just heard the INEC chairman say. It is the Nigerian people who will decide. But on what basis will they be deciding? We have two representatives of two of the major parties right here in our studios. Dr. Ben Wunye is the former chairman of the APC in Enugu State and former secretary of APC Chairman's Forum. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have with us Mr. Segun Showumi, who is, well, he was former spokesperson of the PDP Presidential Campaign Council and is still, for now, this 2023 elections, going to be spokesperson, or is now spokesperson of the PDP Presidential Campaign Council. Is it the Campaign Council or for the president?
No, it's Executive.
Okay, for the candidate himself?
For now.
Okay. So you're welcome to Sunrise Daily, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Quite a lot to ruminate over. Yesterday, let me start with you, Mr. Dr. Wunye. Yesterday, your party unveiled the vice presidential candidate on the ticket of your party. It hasn't come without controversy. Controversy at the event itself and controversy about what was happening, what did not happen at the event. For instance, it was noticed that only 11 governors out of your 22 or so governors were present at that meeting. And some people say it suggests a crack in the house. And then there were also the presence of people who were in garbs, which people thought did not look quite right. The PFN and the CAN of this world have disowned those people, saying they do not know who those bishops and pastors at the event were. Do you want to speak a little to, one, why the governors, the remaining governors of your party were not present, and also the people who were wearing those garbs which we saw at the unveiling of your party's vice presidential candidate?
Yesterday was a great day for APC. For Nigerian people. They got it firsthand to see the incoming vice presidential candidate, by the grace of God. We got it firsthand to see a man who is a true Nigerian, who had traveled around this country, who knows exactly the problem of this country, who will assist Asuwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in fine-tuning the policy that will take us again to the next level. Going into why people didn't come, why the governors didn't come, it's a difficult time. It's a difficult time in Nigeria. And governors have so many things to do. If 11 out of 22 came, there's never been an event where you expect everyone that is invited to show up. So it's not a crack. It's not a crack. We are a party that is heavily united. United in the principle of our progressive agenda. United in making sure that we have a better country than we have today. United in making sure that the next person that we take over from President Muhammadu Buhari will be someone of the progressive extraction, that's the APC. Then you talk about the people, that's the clergymen that were seen there. The opposition party will always raise dust over nothing. So what you have there is people in the opposition painting religious leaders who attended the program as Nigerians, painting them, calling them people on gabs. They are religious leaders. And those religious leaders require and need the same amount of respect as any other religious leader. If somebody had infiltrated the place just to paint the program bad, then nobody can tell, okay, that someone has infiltrated it. But every Nigerian has a right.
I'm trying to get clarity on this. Are you saying that those people in those garbs were pastors, and they're real pastors?
They are clergymen.
And real clergymen.
They are clergymen that had attended. If you had somebody, and as I said, that if you had someone within that mix who decided to infiltrate, then it's an infiltration. But if you have a lot of people who were clergymen who attended the unveiling of our vice presidential candidate, the unveiling of a man who is a uniter, the unveiling of a man who actually is a well-educated man, a well-read man, who is going to be, by the grace of God, the next president, the next vice president of this country. And then all we come out from is the opposition now going on social media, bringing out pictures, painting these individuals as people wearing garbs.
The pictures did not come from outside of your event. The pictures came from your event. The people who were wearing vestments which would ordinarily not be worn outside, apart from the setting of, a celebration of a church program, and they were out there wearing it, you know, in public spaces, attending a political party event. It did seem quite odd to some people, and to people who are aware of these things, especially considering the controversy that the vice presidential candidate's choice within a party had stirred.
You know, I think they want to reduce the issue of Nigerian people to clothing, to Muslim ticket. That is not where Nigeria is.
Are they the ones reducing it, or you are by the choice of people whom you have chosen to invite?
No, these are Nigerian people. These are clergymen who showed up to see who the next VP would be, and they're entitled to be there. Okay, and then if we fail to talk about the economy of this country, if we fail to talk about who will stabilize the economy of this country going forward, and we fail to talk about global warming, and we fail to talk about the children who are supposed to be in school who are outside the school, and how, going forward, how do we get this thing done? If we fail to talk about it, and all we are talking about is men who are clergymen, who are Nigerians, who attended a public event. If an impostor, which I don't know, had gone there as an impostor, then it is for you to verify whether this person is an impostor or not. But you have clergymen, clearly clergymen.
You've had at least 24 hours to come out to Nigerians to tell us if imposters attended your event yesterday. I mean, given the controversy that had raised for you to, because it was your event. If you did not know the people who attended, the onus is on you to tell Nigerians who attended your event. It is not for us to go and start, you know, asking who these people truly are. We are asking you the question that these people who are wearing these clothes, Khan has disowned them. They do not look like the people whom we normally know to be in churches. And these are some of the questions that have been raised. It is on you to tell us who precisely you invited to your event.
This is a public event, and these are Nigerians. These are clergymen who attended a public unveiling of our vice presidential candidate and who want to know what he has to offer. And as yesterday, Senator Shetima was able to make clear his agenda, and he was able to explain who this man is.
You know, for some people, it's about, I do not know how to put it now. They say if we cannot get honesty and, you know, clarity in terms of those who attended an event, it's very difficult for them to get to the meat of the matter, or to even when we get to the meat of the matter, for them to be able to take hook, line, and sinker what it is that your party will have to tell them. But let me come to Mr. Showumi, who is also here. It would seem that this is controversy that has also, is it of a different kind though, that has also dogged your party in the wake of announcing its own vice presidential candidate as well, but does look like there is some quiet in that regard. The question is it a quiet of resolution, or is it a quiet of, you know, we've let that matter be, maybe we'll deal with it in future?
Okay, before I go to that,
yes,
there's a body of science that is called the psychology of decision-making patterns. What that body of science tries to do is that you look at a man or a person and look at the patterning of how he takes decision, and you just say, no, this is just a joke. What we have seen with our rivals is that it's painful to watch. You shouldn't make a mistake with your balancing, because balancing allows inclusion. Now, when the majority wins, say you do a primaries and a majority person can win, the whole essence of what is decent, what is right, what is appropriate, what gives calmness to the society is that you try to balance things. That's why we don't take our wives as vice president. That's why we don't take our cousins. We try to look at the demography in the country and balance it. As far as the Nigerian state is concerned, the demography is divided majorly among two major religious groups: the people of the books, the Islamic ones, and the people of the books, the Christians. Okay, there are two Abrahamic religions. And when you look at the North-South divide, you begin to see that a great number of minority within the northern bloc are also Christians, and there are quite a lot of competent hands there. So when you choose to play to the gallery, or your psychology of patterning is very selfish, and you pick what you have picked, you see, when you now begin to bring whether they are fake, whether they are real, whether they are legitimate, people dressed up that way in whatever mode or shape that you have, and you have a great effort to bring them into your unveiling. It tells you that you have looked at yourself in the mirror and you have known precisely what you have done. And you are just trying to kind of like tell people that, oh, it don't matter because of people that are nameless. We know the ones that must represent the faith. We know Khan. We know the group of Bishop. We know an icon. We know Kuka. We know Bakari. We know Yede. We know the leaders of the faith when it comes to conversation around what is right and what is not right. And if the Christian leaders have been guarded, try very hard not to overheat the polity or make it look bad. I think it's very painful to listen to those kinds of things. That said, my friend tried to say that we're not talking about the economy. Well, I've never been this depressed in my life. I don't have a money problem. I can pick my bills by His grace. But when I look at the exchange rate of the naira to the dollar, you're about 630 now. And then you tell yourself that, what's going on here? You look at the inflation rate. You look at the level of poverty. You
Just
look
a moment. Mr. Showunmi, you know, he was one who raised the question about the economy. We'll come to the economy
okay,
shortly.
so let me just tell you
our
vice presidential
balance.
peak.
Yes, indeed.
When we had opened it up for everybody to participate and buy forms, luckily, or maybe Providence, one of them has emerged in the person of His Excellency Atiku Abubakar from the Northeast, a Muslim, a former vice president. We played according to the rules. We knew that we will come south. It's a no-brainer. We knew we'll look for a governor. And people don't even understand why we always take serving governors as running mates. Mostly it is to ensure that succession is being planned. We knew that we're going to look for someone from the southern region. We knew that as much as possible, we're going to be looking for as close to Ifeanyi to the Igbos as we can. We knew we'd be looking for competence. We knew we'll do all of that. Our situation was just that we had 3 good picks, and we had to take one. And when the people have been profiled and the names are almost competitive in their own right, and you pick one, of course, everybody wants to be picked. So that's what we say. And you've noticed that because we are a political party that allows dialogue, that allows people to ventilate their opinion, you see that nobody has been guarded. There's no piece of the graveyard there. People have spoken up and people have listened, and a lot of work is being done to join the house back there. Because at the end of the day, we had picked Ifeanyi Okowa on this occasion, the former governor, the present governor of Delta State. We could have equally picked Udom, and it would be a fantastic pick. We could have picked Nyesom Wike, governor of Rivers, and it would be a fantastic pick. The question is that we will still have to pick just one. So our case and theirs is not the same. And again...
You talked about the issue of balance. And even though you say that your case and theirs is not the same, there had been that, I really hate to go into it because some people...
So that people can be educated. Go into it.
Okay, because of time. It's not because of the people.
Okay.
It's because of time. We have so many things to talk about.
Let's just go to
but
the
the reason
one.
why I wanted to raise this is because when you talk about balance, you see something wrong with their own balancing act, but you see nothing wrong with the fact that a president of northern extraction is finishing an 8-year term, and your own presidential candidate is still of northern extraction. That has caused some ruckus within your own party.
Not really.
Especially when you look at the stand of the governors before now who had said that this should come to the South. Don't you think that, this is a case of 2 blind men, so
No,
to
it's
speak?
not. In the case of the People's Democratic Party of Nigeria, from our beginning in 1999, we have had the discipline and the thoughtfulness to always rotate. We had Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, a Yoruba man, for 8 years. And we dutifully went to the north with Yar'Adua. He died. Naturally, because we balanced, we had a Jonathan for another 5+ years. Then we lost an election. Our balance tells us we have been in the southern part of the country for the bigger times. Out of our 16 years, we've been there for about 14+. So we have a duty to look at other blocks. We could have played to the gallery and gone to the northwest like they would have done, playing only to the numbers. But we were reasonable enough to know that we still have a big block in the northeast because we have 3 zones up north and 3 zones down south. We could have also played to the gallery of picking a southwest person because of the numbers. But we knew we had to balance it up with somebody that has tangentially southeasterner, who is Igbo, his name is Ifeanyi, and we knew he had to be in the South. And see, we don't have a universal zoning pattern with parties. Everybody zones as they see it. But you must be able to see that to the best of our ability and our good intention, we have been moving the people. We have only 2 zones left in PDP that we have not given the ticket, and we will give them. We've not given the Southeasterners the ticket, we will, and we've not given the North Central the ticket, we will. But for them to do
it looks like the people are not waiting for your party or that of the APC to give them.
No,
let me flip this conversation to Lagos now, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Mr. Showmi, just to be clear on that point you were making, so essentially you're saying that you tried to, you had 2 options, balance within the party or balance within the wider context of Nigeria. So you chose balance within the context of the party instead of balance in the wider context of Nigeria.
No. What we had done is to follow our own voting agenda. After the 2015 election loss, we had an Ikirimadu report which looked through the country. And the long and short of that report was that going forward, balancing and zoning must be kept for 8 years. Why? Because whoever becomes either governor or president will have right of first refusal. And so that we don't have to have that conversation over and over again, we kept it for 8 years. Now, when we got to 2019, after the 2019, we had the Governor Bala Mohammed report, which went around again to look and say, what's going on with our zoning? Looking at what was going on in the country, we concluded that on this particular occasion, we needed to leave it open because we hadn't completed the second leg of the 8th term in the Northeast, and there was a lot of desire to accommodate any other person who was bold enough and could get the number. The problem with democracy is that in democracy, once you vote, once you're subjected to a vote, you must live with the outcome. The only other option you have, having taken the outcome of a vote, is to try to do equity and balance with choices. And that was why I said the psychological patterning of how they make decisions, especially Bola Tinubu, is a bit difficult to understand. I can give him 3 names of people who would have made very good vice president. I thought he would go for continuity of the Buhari administration by taking the SSG, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. He would have been able to, be in the warehouse of government. He was there, and there are a few others. But when you reduce a whole northern space and you reduce 80 million Christians to a people that you are going to come and use narrative and caricature people wearing, garbs that does not even reflect how those people normally dress, even if the clothes will not make the monk, shall somebody come into a political space dressed shabbily, dressed the way a normal person will go for sacrament? Shall we desecrate it to that extent? Shall we literally be spitting on our conscience because they themselves know what they've done to themselves and what they've done to them? And I expect Nigerians to punish them, and I expect Nigerians to punish them very hard, so that we will understand that those who do balance, those who do inclusion, they do it to make sure that every part of Nigeria can find themselves in the ticket. How do you expect an Igbo man to find himself in the ticket when they are predominantly Christian and there's no Christian vice, there's no Christian president? How do you expect somebody from Kaduna, from Chibok, from some of those big areas, how do you expect them to find themselves in the ticket? You can explain it to them, and you have not brought a man with some highfalutin special skills that you say, oh, goodness, because of his skill, we let it go. What are you talking about? They're just playing to they're not fighting about, and I expect them to lose.
Well, gentlemen, the parties, all of them, will have to eventually go face Nigerians and see what they think of their choices. But for both political parties, I mean, the APC and the PDP, we know that people, given the way the elections turned out in 2015, were not happy with the PDP, and so they decided to go the way of the APC. And given the situation of the country today, there are lots of people who are asking questions, why should we even continue with the APC now? So to the extent that they ask, why should we even vote for either the APC or the PDP? They're looking into other options, saying, look, what could our best decision be? So several people in different places. But Dr. Moye, for you, given how the situation of the economy is at the moment, and I mean, I'm sure you need no telling concerning how the economy is. From your perspective, is there any reason whatsoever why you think that someone perhaps who had it a lot better previously maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, given the rate of the exchange rate, the value of the naira, and then looking at the cost of basic products today, why would they want to continue with the APC, for instance?
They would have to think about the individuals that will take charge. Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima Tiket. They will have to look at that these things didn't just happen. That it was the 16 years of misrule of PDP that brought us where we were. And we are coming out from a ditch dug by the PDP government of 16 years. They would have to look at the improvement that we have gotten so far. They have also to look at what happened. How do we get here? Is it a misrule? No. We had a pandemic. We had a slump on our mono economy, the oil economy. They would have to look at the infrastructure deficit that we had for 16 years under the rulership of the PDP. They would have to look at the improvements on road infrastructure, on the railroad infrastructure. They would have to look at the social investment scheme. They were not there before. The youth empowerment, they were not there before. Those things that this government had done, including the school feeding, the homegrown food for kids, they would have looked at that and said, who can sustain this improvement? The issue of economy is a world thing. It's everywhere, occasioned by the pandemic. As far as Nigeria is concerned, as far as Nigeria, if you bring it down to Nigeria, you look at what happened. 16 years of lack of investment, 16 years of visionless PDP leadership, 16 years of infrastructural deficit. We want to go back there when you talk about punishing APC.
Okay, well...
You want to go back
Dr. Nwoye,
to 16 years of nothing.
I mean, there are several questions to follow up from what you've said about where we were then, where we are now. But since you specifically referenced 16 years ago, do we want to go back there? And Mr. Showome is there with you, so I'll just flip to him and get him to perhaps respond to the same question. Mr. Showome, yes, why should people look the way of the PDP? Perhaps you may also want to respond to what Dr. Nwoye has said in your response to this next question as well, Mr. Showome.
You know, generally, democracy does not have an impression that one party will win all the time. So it's possible that after a 16-year reign of PDP, the country could, take another turn. But luckily, the parameters and the indicators of where the country was 16 years ago and where it is today is clear. We were the biggest and the fastest growing economy in Africa. We got to double digit, then we slowed down. We had done a lot of liberalization, a lot of great ideas that even created new money. Every civil servant who owned the house, the biggest wealth transfer to the middle of the pyramid was done by us. Our concept around education was so firm. We did the SUBE, we guaranteed early education for people for the first, 6 + 3, 9 years. These are people that have no conscience. The university system is shut down for 6 months, and it doesn't really bother them. They have excuses for everything. In our 16-year cycle, we dealt with Ebola, and we managed it. There was also the money market in terms of the housing crisis of the world that impacted big banks and big economy. We managed it. There was also the fact that sometimes hydrocarbon go up and sometimes it goes down. There was also the fact that we had consent policy. There's also the fact that we had the ability to be able to do business again. There's also the fact that most people don't even realize that, but for the fact that they came with their plenty talk and zero plans, we would have actually thought that PDP was a bad party. You need to ask yourself, you say you're investing in agriculture, why is it not impacting on food on the table for people? If you say you are doing a monetary policy that makes sense even to you, why is your entire money system opaque? If you just called in the deposit, if you called in the debt of most of the people that are sustaining you, you'll find out that we're in trouble. If you look at against balance sheet, whatever the hell the CBN man is doing there, you will know we're in a mess. If you get to a point where after we have exited debt and paid for the debt, we're using about 90-something% of our monies now, our income, to service debt. Look, I understand the fact and the right of everybody to talk. Sometimes I even ask myself, why bother? Can't the Nigerians feel it by themselves? Look at the quality and the quantum of crisis in the country. You can't travel by road. You can't travel by air safely because if they've made the price very high now. You can't travel by rail. We now have a scenario where people are gently and peacefully praying in church and people are killing them there. We now have this level of insensitivity. We have the whole of the Plateau Benue region where people are just unable to farm. We have an economic policy that doesn't even make sense to them. We have a monetary policy that tells you how are they running a big budget, and yet there's so much dryness in the economy. You have a lot of silly stories around infrastructure, forgetting that even most of this infrastructure financing, we had concluded them under the Jonathan regime with the Chinese. So I really do not want us to fool Nigerians. Democracy carries with it some responsibility to the citizens. It is a referendum for the ruling party. They need to ask themselves, how have their lives and that of their parents been, and how is it now? When they do e-economy and all of those being able to do so much on their phones, they need to remember that we made that happen. When they have, all of this flutterware and all of these great ideas that young people and innovation, they need to understand that we created the purpose and the basis by which small and medium scale funding will happen in this country. Look, I'm not going to be here exchanging words with an APC person who cannot even look himself in the mirror and say to himself that even his own life is better. Look at the whole of the
All right, Mr. Shomi, we'll talk a little more.
Look at the South.
Pardon me, we'll talk a little more about that, perhaps implication of your choices when we return in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Welcome back. We still have Mr. Ben Nwoye, Dr. Ben Nwoye, former chairman APC Enugu and former secretary APC chairman Forum. And we have Mr. Segun Shomi, former spokesperson PDP Presidential Campaign Council. They're with us in our Abuja studio. Mr. Ben Nwoye, I'm coming to you. Now we're talking about the implications of your party's decision. And I couldn't miss it when you said earlier that, the party is united and the absence of some governors does not necessarily speak to disunity. But really, there's still some rumble within your party following the decision. News came in yesterday that Mr. Magnus Abe from Rivers State has resigned from your party. And there are reports of a cold war between your party's presidential candidate and the Kaduna State governor following his decision to go the way of Senator Shettima instead of him. And we can't forget in a hurry how APC Christians have responded to the Muslim ticket, saying that they are not going to vote for your parties and not going to support your party's presidential candidates in 2023. So is your position about unity a redefinition of what unity should be?
The party is united. Believe you me. The party is united. You have a competitive democracy. Those who lost out for one way or another, they come up with a reason to say that there's a dissenting voice. Not everyone would agree, even if you have a Muslim Christian ticket, like the President Muhammadu Buhari ran. Not everybody agreed that the vice presidential candidate that ran with President Muhammadu Buhari will make a dent. When you talk about people leaving the party, the Magnus Abe did not leave the party because of the idea that Shettima was chosen as a vice presidential candidate. We had Christians. By the way, during the primary, we had Christians. We had at least two Christian clerics who ran against Asuwaju. The Christians there, over 2,322 people, many of them Christians, did not find it fit to elect a Christian as a presidential candidate. They elected a Muslim. But when we reduce the destiny of this country to faith, to issue of faith, then we are actually going for the destruction. For us to think about it not on the basis of who can do what, not on the basis of what these men can bring on the table. Shettima, Kashim Shettima, this is a man Who has
resigned
picked
because
up
of
a Christian boy from
in
the street?
protest of the Muslim ticket? Why did Mr. Magnus Abe resign from the party?
So I didn't hear you well.
Why did Mr. Magnus Abe resign from the party?
The report I have indicates that Magnus Abe wants to run for governor in another party. Has absolutely nothing. And he also indicated that Magnus Abe said he will support Asuwaju. He has not left the support of the ticket, but he wants to run for governor. And he had given another gentleman, Cole, the ticket. Many people leave because of their own personal interests. They want to pursue their own personal agenda, their own personal political ambition, and they are free to do so. This is democracy. Not every Christian will vote for a Christian Muslim ticket. And not every Muslim will vote for a Muslim ticket. And if we reduce everything about 2023 to who is a Christian or who is a Muslim, then we have failed it.
Right.
Now, my friend here talked about how they have balanced it. You have power shifting throughout this time, shifting from the north to the south. But the PDP refused to shift. They went back. This is a guy that was beaten mercilessly several times. He's ran to become the president of this country and lost repeatedly because Nigerian people rejected him. Because it's not good. They know his record.
Well,
they know his record. They know the record of PDP.
Well, Dr. Woes.
And then this is the same guy that the PDP gave the ticket.
If I could come in now.
Going back to North.
I think it's a case of let he who is without sin be the first to cast a stone. The current president also ran several times before he eventually became president. So it looks like, I mean, both parties have similar histories, it will seem. But let me take this back to Mr. Showmi. Well, essentially, this is for both of you. Because of time, I'd like us to speed it up. So, fair enough, Nigerians have tried the PDP for 16 years. They have now tried the APC going into 8 years. Mr. Showmi, will it be fair to you if Nigerians then say, well, we've tried the APC, we've tried the PDP, we've not gotten the desired outcome for our nation, Nigeria. Let's look elsewhere, outside of the APC and PDP.
Well, I would just say that there are election voting decisions that people must weigh well. You can't, fumble and just jump and wobble and scream on social media and imagine that it takes off more than 24 years of building political structure. No democracy in the world imagines that once a party has lost election before, it's no longer able to win election again. As a matter of fact, all the existing stable democracy has been a balance between the left, if you like, and the right somehow. So that the ones that lost before have given Nigerians an opportunity to see how their lives work. How much was a bag of rice? How many years ago? How much is it now? How much is this? How much is that? How much is fuel? How much is everything? Now, if you insist that every time you are going to run democracy, your idea is that you have to throw the water away completely and start afresh, the question then will be, do you truly expect that the two major parties and their followers will not vote? So there is a realistic proposition of who can win. And Nigerians must understand the greatest challenge we have before us in 2023 is to just say, be gone, APC. We need to audit you. You have done so much. We need to know precisely what.
Well,
because
Mr. Showmi, incidentally,
you will never know the extent of things they've done.
Incidentally, Mr. Showmi, pardon me.
Votes and all that doesn't work.
Incidentally, Mr. Showmi, about 7 years ago, Nigerians.
They come with a plan.
Right. About 7 years ago, Nigerians actually also said, be gone to the PDP, which is why, incidentally as well, some of the other frontline candidates are people who have been either in the PDP or in the APC. And when you said that people who have built structures for 24 years or even more, I ask you, what have those structures earned us, really? Under the PDP, people essentially said, Nigeria is not what we want it to be, so let's try the APC. Now, under the APC, I mean, you have also said it, that Nigeria is not where it ought to be, so let's try something else. For you, naturally, it will be PDP. So would you honestly say that Nigeria has been better off with all of these structures, either within the APC or PDP, that have been built for decades now?
It has been better off. You see, people forget where the country was in 1999. The challenge of Nigeria then was that we were a pariah state. Most people make it seem as if PDP was handed a glowing economy and then they messed it up. No. We couldn't even write a letter of credit. And we built it to a level. And we liberalized, we opened up the sector, more private sector activities is going on. You no longer need to pick a tally to pick money in the bank. We've even migrated more people to electronic banking. These are serious reforms. And okay, we lost an election in 2015. Those who were coming were screaming on top of their voices. They'll make the dollar one-to-one. They'll create 10 million jobs. They'll do this, they'll do that. We try to tell the Nigerian people, interrogate the how. Ask them, how will you do it? How will you do it? How will you do it? They will bring the Nigerian people and said, okay, they can do it, they can do it. We have all seen what has happened in the 7 years they've been. We are very miserable. We are duly divided. We are a broke-ass nation. We're using about 90% of our monies to service debt. Our currency has almost little or no value. We can't exchange anything for anything because almost all the currencies... Look, I was in one shop one day, and a Ghanaian man who had visited Ghana came to the shop to buy something in an Apple shop. And he had just come in from Ghana, so he was asking that, how much is this, how much is that? You know, he was doing the conversion. I was ashamed. He started to laugh so hilariously with his wife or his girlfriend. I was saying, is this how the Nigerian currency is? Because he couldn't believe how much naira he was getting for his dollar. I was standing there. Now, these are all issues. They have not shown us any roadmap that will get us out of where we are. And then they have the temerity to put their fingers in our eyes by trying to tell us that, okay, it's bad enough that they're going to go and bring a caricature who did abysmally below average in Lagos relative to the total size of Lagos and all the people. And they're bringing their friends from the northeasters, who is also a Muslim, and they're telling all the Igbos you have no role there, all the Christians you have, all the Middle Belters you have, Benue you have no role, Taraba you have no role,
Mr. Showme, pardon me, I need to come in now.
We can find one person. Chibok, we can find one person. Look, the next election is a referendum. Anybody who cannot win an election needs to empty into the party that can win. And for now, not just win, but can also deliver better. And you're going to be having a ticket of two people who are very sober, who are very, very intelligent, who are very planned. You look at Okowa's CV.
Well, Mr. Showme, we'll get into the campaigning proper eventually. Pardon me, we'll get to the campaigning proper eventually, bless you. But, you know, determining who wins at the end of the day, the party that can win, is actually a function of the Nigerian people, the electorate, I imagine the 95 million people who are expected to participate or at least be registered for this election. But I'd like to take this back to Dr. Nwoye. And I know that your candidate, your presidential candidate, had meetings with party chairman. And I imagine that during that meeting, the chairman will have presented at least the thinking, the realities of the states they represent in terms of the economy, what the people are yearning for, insecurity as well. And, you know, the list is literally endless. So I wonder, what were the issues that were brought up? What are the considerations beyond, oh, this is how we will win? What are the issues that were brought up that, okay, these are the challenges Nigerians are facing, and this is what our people are telling us? Did they present such?
I wasn't in the meeting. I'm a former chairman. But I can tell you that our candidate is ready. All this hop and talk, we deal with it. We'll unveil our manifesto at the appropriate time. We don't want to drop the gun or beat the gun and start talking about what the Ashwaju Ahmed Tinubu Shetima's ticket would do. But we know that these are able people to talk about Lagos. And for my friend here to reduce Lagos as a small state. This is a man that managed, I think, the third, if not the second, the third largest economy in the West African zone. Managed it. This is a man that ran a state without taking a penny for almost 3 years from the federal government. He finished, he has the roadmap. He made Lagos State the modern state that it is today. Okay? So when you talk about that man, and you talk about Kashim Shettima, a man that managed economy and a state in the midst of Boko Haram, and he was still able to build schools, he was able to build roads, he was able to destroy churches, and as well as bombed out mosques. He was able to manage both the Christians and the Muslims. These are people that will be Nigerian president and vice president, not religious leaders.
Right, let me try to rephrase.
What the PDP wants to do is to reduce this conversation to what divides us.
Okay, let me try to rephrase, Dr. Woye.
So if you say anything, they will say the Igbos.
Right, pardon me.
You know what? All the Igbos that ran for the PDP presidential candidate, they all lost. They didn't give it to them. The Southeasterners say it's their turn. It is their turn. They were Christians, they were Igbos, they were Southeasterners, and they all lost.
Well, there were Southeasterners.
Wike felt like the one was taken off his feet.
There were Southeasterners on the APC presidential primaries as well, really, if we look at it. But pardon me, the question I was trying to ask when I talked about the meeting with the chairman is essentially how well your candidate understands, and of course his vice, how they understand the realities of the Nigerian people, the yearnings. I really want to know if it is on their table, the yearnings from the north, south, east, and west, the states, what they're going through. Are they taking this into consideration? Because looking at some of the things that have played out in recent times, it would seem as though, in spite of all of those challenges, we're not tackling them. We're looking at how we would win this election.
You see, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not the president of this country right now. But he understood the politics involved. He's a strategist. That is why immediately after the unveiling of his vice presidential candidate, he held a closed-door meeting with grassroots leaders, the 36 state chairmen and Abuja, to understand what is going on in the various states and then how to fix it. He's a man that believes in consultation. So it was a consultative meeting. I wasn't inside there. I was at presidential campaign. I was not part of the meeting because I'm not a state chairman. So I can't talk about the content. But I can tell you that what he did was talk to them, or rather listen to them, to talk about the individual state and their needs and what is going on in their individual states as a leader of the party and as our standard bearer. So he can't develop all these, the manifesto which we will be unveiling without getting the heartbeat of the people, without understanding what is going on in those areas. He understands the issue of security or insecurity. He understands the issues of economy, of where we find ourselves now. And he understands the need to communicate with the Nigerian people. And it's not just about winning. It is not just about winning. You talked about what happened with the other people. The two other front runners were PDP people who were actually not happy with PDP, and so they left. One of them left just before the PDP primary and accused PDP that he cannot be part of this. And thank goodness, his movement had actually given light to many people who would otherwise not participate in the political system, who are coming in now and discussing Nigerian issue and Nigerian problem. The other gentleman that left and formed another political party is also a PDP man who thinks that the PDP has been hijacked by one or two persons who believe that he didn't have opportunity to be able to sell this manifesto.
Dr. Woye.
So we have 3 or 2 splinter groups.
More clearly, you're speaking about the Labour Party candidate and the NNPP candidate?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
Just putting names to
okay,
them.
So we had Obi, the Labour Party candidate, who is a PDP or was a PDP aspirant, who followed all the way. When he found out that it was being purchased, when he found out that it was the big money thing, that it was being cash and carry system, he pulled out, and because he was disgusted. The same thing with the Kwankwaso group, the AMPP group. He was a PDP man who at some point found out that he could not deal with those who have hijacked the party.
Sufficient clarification to the names which you are mentioning. I don't know if Kayode is done, but you know, some people will say that indeed, and Mr. Showme has highlighted it, that indeed what is going to happen in 2023 is a referendum on how your party has performed in office. You're not, yes, you have a new ticket, but essentially it's a continuity of your own party policies. You talked about how you've not unveiled your manifesto. Is your manifesto going to change?
A presidential candidate is entitled, okay, It is not a political party.
It's not a political party manifesto. Okay, so let's talk about because you know one of the ways to actually defend or to ask people to vote for you again is by looking at what you have done before. Interestingly, you're still in office. The three primary things which you said you were coming to do was fight corruption, was tackle the economy, and also give Nigerians security. Let's take a look at the first one, security. In that regard, how well would you say your party has fared? I know that, oftentimes they go to the Northeast and it's the first example, oh, we have tackled terrorism in the Northeast. But we know that today the major challenge we face is not the Northeast. The Northwest has been taken. Yeah, the Northeast, the challenge is still there. We have to still look for how to settle people and make sure that Boko Haram's head is bowed there. But the Northwest is now a new place we do not understand. The North Central, too, is another challenge. The Southeast, people do not understand what is going on there. So, I mean, that's where you're from. Can you tell us how you can defend, say, to Southeasterners, where you most likely will be campaigning, amongst whom you likely will be campaigning to say, this is how my party has fared, based on this, you should vote for us again?
Security is a global challenge. So when you talk about how we've done in security, it is even amazing when you think about it, when you say that you should forget Northeast. No, we can't forget Northeast. You should take your time and go to Maiduguri, and you see that life is going on there. They've moved away, but it is being tackled. It is an everyday phenomenon. It is not restricted to Nigeria. Even if you look at the United States, they're still battling with it. There's a gun issue. People walk in, criminals walk in and kill innocent people all over the world. No government can prevent that. No government can prevent that all over the world.
So people have, well, we're almost out of time. People say that, for every problem that is local, there are also local solutions. The difference is that there have been solutions that have been proposed even amongst governors, and those solutions have not exactly been considered wholeheartedly or implemented wholeheartedly. But, quickly, what is your own party going to be doing differently on the issue of security? What is your party going to be doing differently?
One of the things I can tell Nigerians absolutely is that security is one of our top burner issues, and we've been very heavy on research. We're well aware that they've not done as much dialogue as they should have with all of the contending issues. One of the reasons why we're willing and prepared to have a national dialogue and what kind of country do you want to have, and why we are insisting on inclusion and fairness, is because you can't explain away my right under the guise that you have the ability to mirror yourself into my situation. What am I saying? If you have a large community of people that represent a certain diversity, they need to be able to find themselves tangentially in your ticket. Any other thing is hogwash. The other thing is that for you to say you are able to do this job, you must have an opportunity to have been sitting very close to the villa to understand the issues involved. If you had brought us an Oshibaju, I would have been shaking, because I would have said he understands everyday issues that the president has contended with. Atiku was a vice president. That's a heartbeat away. He's a former customs that has command and control. He's from the north. He knows these things. Okowa himself, do you see the kind of madness going on everywhere happen in Delta when it comes to security? We don't just, PDP, we don't just pick candidates. First of all, we subject it to democratic process, somebody wins, and then we balance it based on competence. And if they had brought me a Nasser El-Rufai as their running mate, I wouldn't have been happy for Muslim, but I would have said, okay, a disruptor. If they had brought me Yahya Bello as their vice president, I said, okay, they're looking for the youth. If they had brought me a Zulu, I would have said, okay, they're bringing the fine administrative. What have they brought? What they have done, the psychological profiling of their decision-making system is that they're very entitled. If you look, it's my turn. I can do whatever I like. The president fell down 3 times. I'm going to do it once. These are the kinds of things that have impacted how they think and how
We're
they take
totally out of
decisions.
time, gentlemen, and I know that this is a conversation that's certainly going to be ongoing. I mean, we're going to be having conversations like this up until maybe 2 days before the elections themselves. Gentlemen, we have to thank you so much for coming on this morning. Dr. Ben Nwunye is the former chairman of the APC in Enugu State and former secretary of the APC Chairman's Forum. And Mr. Segun Showunmi is currently the spokesperson to Vice President,
Don't forget
to the presidential,
candidate Ogun State.
indeed, to the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party. Thank you so much for coming on this morning.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
I will take a break at this point. I'll be back to talk about the implications of the unveiling of the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited. Even I still have to live with that new name, getting used to it. In just a moment, please stay with us.
Well, yes, we're talking about economic matters now, and as you've seen there, Professor Oyebanji Oyelaron Oyeyinka joins us next. He is the SSA on industrialization to the president of AFDB. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah,
Thank you for inviting.
Yeah, so we've seen, we just heard some of the reports about decisions being taken by the central bank, its impact on inflation, interest rates. We've seen the fiscal policies, the monetary ones as well. But the thing is, looking through, I mean, you had the presentation recently, and where you spoke about this industrial descent, developmental descent, and how we need to address it. But some of the figures there too are quite depressing, especially when you look through the parts where you spoke about the fact that our income 40 years ago, as a matter of fact, was 6 times that of China. But in 2019, Chinese income has become almost 3.45 times that of Nigeria. That cannot gladden anyone's heart. But the thing is, the authorities here, they've taken, and they keep taking decisions which they say they expect to bring us out of where we are and get us to a better place. But yet, we still are where we are. So talk us through it. What is the missing link? How do we begin to address these kind of challenges?
No, thank you so much. You know, you just mentioned the issue of macroeconomic issues and so forth. But what I spoke to on that day is the long term. We study long-term trends. We study long-term patterns. While the macro issues are extremely important, the emphasis I made on that day is that a nation grows based on deep-going investment in the industrial sector. A nation cannot rely on knee-jerk reactions. A nation has to invest in the long term. So history matters a lot. As you said, 40 years ago, we were like 6 times the income per capita of China. Same thing with close to that of South Korea. In 1967, South Korea overtook Nigeria. We're actually like 50 years behind South Korea. What we export today is what Malaysia was exporting about 30 years ago. Why is that? Because they invested in those things that matter. The real source of growth is at the factory level. The real source of economic prosperity is those things that you process, you manufacture, and then you sell to people. And in the process of doing that, you learn, you accumulate technological capabilities, you learn, you build up your scientific and technological base of those countries. We have done exactly the opposite. Look at the labs. We were in the University of Ife in the 70s, late 70s, 80s. The kind of labs we had. Within even the federal structure, the kind of scientific labs that we had, all are gone. You know, when COVID struck, a company called Pfizer reacted almost immediately and came up with the mRNA vaccine. As we speak, this year, only 16% of Africans have been vaccinated. And when you go to Europe, almost 80%, 90% have been vaccinated because they had that technological capability to respond to crises that destroyed economies. And why was Pfizer able to react? Because it's a company that was an obscure company 174 years ago. And it kept on building on those capabilities over time. And therefore, it had the arsenal, all the equipments, all the manpower, all the skills, knowledge base to react quickly when crisis came. This is the problem we have. We get to a point when COVID struck, we couldn't react. We were helpless, we were begging, we were mourning and talking about vaccine nationalism, which is true. I mean, you have all this so-called global collaboration simply broke down because countries prioritize their own nationals. So that was the issue I took up on that day at this meeting. And a number of, they actually invited a number of young youth service engineers there. 3 of them were crying. I gave them the example, that when President Jonathan was there, he commissioned a study on abandoned projects, and it was found that close to over 1,000-something projects in Nigeria were abandoned. Not because we didn't have the technical capability, but basically because of our way of doing things. All of them were, and they cited again that albatross on our hand, the Ajakuta was cited among that. The original cost of that project was $650 million. By the time we finished, it was $5 billion, and it never operated. It never even got completed. And I contrasted that with the Pohang State Plant in South Korea. We started 2 years apart. And today, Pohang State Plant exports $60 billion of steel every year, employs 65,000 people directly. When you look at the nature of that kind of industry, for every one person you employ in a steel plant, you employ 15 people downstream. So close to 1 million people will have been employed downstream, high-skilled labor.
Well, Prof.
So that I spoke to on that day.
Right. I need to come in now, Prof. I mean, when you talk about industrialization, factories, I couldn't help but think about the fact that, bread bakers, manufacturers are going on strike. It goes all the way. It's not just bread, but bread is a big deal, and I can go on and on, different, industries and all of that. But you particularly said we need to invest in factories. You gave the example of Pfizer. And I know Pfizer is not government-owned. It was started by 2 German immigrants in New York about 173 years ago. So how should we invest in factories in the Nigerian context? Is it as a private sector? Are you talking about government? What exactly do you mean? I know this is long-term, but it's never too late to get these ideas and work on them. So what exactly do you mean investing in factories? Who should be doing that?
So the role of government is very clear. The role of government is to be the enabler, the insurer of innovative activities. By the way, we started this long time ago. There was a time, right, when we had Dunlop, when we had Michelin. There was a time when we had Leyland, when we had Pan, when we had Volkswagen. There was a time in Nigeria when we had Okitikupa, oil palm. There was a time that we had sawmills, very sophisticated companies. There was a time. So what happened was what you call deindustrialization. It's not that we never did it, we just never sustained it. So investing in factories means that you need to sustain those things. The countries we all look up today, and I'm sorry to say, I keep saying it, that for me, it's lost opportunities. In fact, I spoke a lot about lost opportunities, and we can quantify them. It will break your heart, when you really put figures to those things. That we are not focused, we don't have long-term vision of society, we don't have leadership that can conceptualize, and the elite to agree. The elite must agree that people need to be served. This is really, so it wasn't that we didn't start, we started it. We started investing in factories, we started investing in all across. I was with the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research for 10 years, and we used to go all around this country to Basita Sugar, Savannah Sugar. We used to go all over the place. Yes, of course, they were not, optimal, but there were factories. Kaduna Superphosphate, Nigerian textiles employed over 1 million people in the up until 80s, right? We had Arewa, we had in Kaduna, we had in Kano. Those were actually commercial centers. It wasn't limited to just one area of our country. It's everywhere. So when we took our eyes off the ball because short-term gains, you know, what oil and all these minerals resources do to you is that you take your eyes off the ball. Short-termism, cheap money, you know, and then it breeds corruption. And then it solidifies institutions that promote those kinds of corruption. People just sit down and then they just, you know, think, oh, okay, tomorrow oil will go to $100. Right now, oil has gone to 100 and plus. We are not reaping it. You see what is happening today? In 2020, Nigeria exported goods worth under $30 billion from the oil industry. We imported $72 billion. Look at the balance of payment in that sector alone. So this is what lack of investment in that, what I call deep-going, long-term, sustainable sector of industries, building of factories. The factory is the center of creativity. The factory is where money is made, where people make money.
Well,
this is
Prof,
why.
Looking at, you know, the state of the economy, the interest rates raised by the CBN just after the announcement by the NBS of, you know, the new inflation rate. But the CBN has bitten the bullet as expected. And in justifying the decision, according to that report, they said that development financing is a palliative and, you know, they're releasing credits to the agricultural sector and to the health sector. But if we look at, you know, the trajectory, particularly since 2014, that the Apex Bank has invested in the Anchor Borrower Scheme and the Commercial Agriculture Credit Scheme, where are the gains really, you know, from development financing? If we look at the food inflation rate, which is as high as 22%.
No, thank you very much. This goes to the heart of the issue. We have to, and one has to commend the president of Nigeria and all those who put agriculture forward. And I'm not talking of small-scale agriculture, I'm putting as a priority. But how have we implemented it? This is the core of the issue. This is, I am not in the government, I don't know have the figures, but the point is that when you look at the state of agriculture today, you wonder yourself, where did all the money go to? You know, what we speak about, there are two sides to it. There's the on-farm and the off-farm sector. Where the real gains are is where industry intervenes. You produce, for example, you produce cassava, you produce all of those things. Now, off the farm is really where the issue is, lies. Who process cassava? We have remained an agrarian society where people are using charcoal and whatever it is in the villages to process cassava. But when you take cassava to China or somewhere else, they are put in giant factories where it is turned to industrial starch, it's turned to methanol and high-value products. When you take cocoa, for example, you know, say yesterday I had a conversation with one of those who are really heavily involved. A ton of cocoa bean is is about $2,000. You just semi-process it to cocoa butter, it goes $7,000. By the time you get to a ton of chocolate, it's about $15,000. So look at the multiplier effect by simply putting together some columns of factory and then adding value to that cocoa bean that you harvest. The same thing across every of the, same thing with cashew. So fine, we hear about this thing. We've made some gains with rice, for example. In Nigeria, we moved to the top in Africa. But in terms of the gains of industrial opportunity that we have, we still haven't got there. This is the problem. So,
Prof, you have made a significant point there, saying that the real deal is in industrialization. And, you know, some of the partakers in the industry will say that the off-takers are not readily available because of the volume of the raw material that they require, that is not enough. And that brings to mind the president's comment in a very recent interview with Channels Television, where he says only 2.5% of arable land are tapped in agriculture. So has the administration missed it, by not investing as massively as it should in agriculture?
Yeah, of course, Nigeria has missed it. It's not just, right from the beginning of time. In 1950, 1960, Nigeria was a global leader in oil palm, for example. We produced 43% of all global oil palm. Today, 2%. 43% in 1960. Today, 2%. We were right ahead. Today, only Malaysia and Indonesia cultivate 80%. And of course, they dominate the global. So, we have missed it. Today, we plant 600,000 hectares of oil palm. Malaysia, 6 million. So, we are 10%. Same thing with Indonesia. Today, Indonesia cultivates about 14 million hectares of oil palm. So, the idea that the raw materials are not enough is a chicken and egg issue. Then cultivate more, incentivize people to cultivate, because farmers will not do it if they don't have offtake. 200 million people we have, and we're even within this country alone, because we still import all of this. So there is something missing in the value chain. We need to fix that value chain. It's become a cliche, right? People just say, oh, value chain, value chain. But in practical terms, we have not been successful in actually dealing with the issue. So this is the point that we are making. I think we should stop giving excuses to ourselves. 16 years of lost opportunities and failure.
All right, Prof. So in conclusion, while you spoke about the challenges with industrialization, you also identified what caused it and what are the key considerations for us to factor in order to begin to move forward. And you spoke about knowledge, both scientific and technological knowledge. So if we were to focus on that, do you have any figure to say if we put in this amount of money in this amount of years, we should be able to make meaningful impacts? Could you tell us about that?
No, thank you. I mean, the point is, I always have a problem with people just talking about money. We want to see outcome, right? You and I have that frustration in our country. Oh, so and so have released 80 billion to this. Nobody knows where the money goes. Nobody comes to account to you and say, because of this money, we built 10 factories for cassava. We built 20 this for this. So, yes, so one can put tentative figures, but I just gave you some figures earlier. We are 50 years plus behind South Korea. So there is the basis of all of that is education, secondary, primary, university, laboratories that don't exist anymore, reagents that people cannot find. This is a blessed country. There's no amount of thing that we can do now. Proper public finance management is key to what we need to do from now. We can throw up all the figures, but how is it managed? Where is it? Where's the leakages? How come it doesn't show up in outcomes? And those are the things we need to deal with. In that paper, I gave an example when Park Chung-hee, the general who built Korea, basically who was actually the architect of modern Korea, every Monday he had a meeting with the team that was building their Pohang steel plant. Every Monday. In fact, there's a whole book that was written on it, and it says, if you want to look for, in a regression analysis, if you want to look for the factor of who built Korea, Park Chung-hee will be the matter. But if you want to see who actually made sure that that country become a modern industrial society, he said, Park is the only factor. Leadership.
All right.
Leadership. That is the key, leadership and governance.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran Oyeyinka, who is the Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of AFDB. Always a pleasure to have you on, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So there you go. That is the show today. We do thank you immensely for your time today. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow. if you find that time. But we'll always appreciate it. That is the show today. Thank you for watching. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
And I need to mention, just to those who have the power to end this bread strike, that's what I'm calling it. Let's do something about it, because bread is important, right? You don't want to know the implications of not having your daily bread. Well, I'm tired of eating.
Well, sorry we couldn't take your comments today, but keep them coming. I'm sure we'll represent your comments tomorrow on the program. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.